The emergency beacon pierced through the void of space like a desperate scream. Its signal, transmitted on the universal distress frequency used by the Galactic Coalition, carried with it coordinates, vital signs, and most importantly, a plea for help that would reach the most unlikely of saviors. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Resilience, her weathered hands gripping the command console as the translation matrix worked overtime to decode the alien transmission. Around her, the bridge crew maintained their usual efficiency, but she could sense the tension in the air. They were 3 months into what was supposed to be a routine patrol of the Outer Rim territories that most Coalition species considered too dangerous to venture into. Captain, Lieutenant Torres called from the communication station, his voice tight with concentration.
I'm getting a cleaner signal now.
It's definitely a Coalition distress beacon, but the linguistic patterns.
I've never seen anything like this.
Sarah moved to his station, her boots making soft thuds on the metal deck plating. The sound would have been jarring to most alien species, too heavy, too aggressive.
But then again, humans had earned their reputation as Deathworlders for good reason. Play it again, she ordered.
The bridge speakers crackled to life, and an alien voice filled the air. The words were unfamiliar, but the universal translator worked frantically to parse their meaning.
What came through was fragmented but clear enough.
Coalition vessel, under attack, coordinates follow, please, any ship, we are dying. The message cut off abruptly, leaving the bridge in heavy silence.
Where are those coordinates, Torres? Sarah asked, already knowing she wasn't going to like the answer. Sector 7G, Captain. The Forbidden Zone.
A collective intake of breath swept through the bridge crew. The Forbidden Zone was aptly named. It was a region of space that had been quarantined by the Coalition nearly 50 years ago after an expedition had encountered something that had left only one survivor, and that survivor had never been quite right afterward.
Coalition law stated that no ship was to enter the zone under any circumstances.
But humans had never been particularly good at following rules when lives were at stake.
Sir, Commander Jackson, her first officer, stepped forward.
His expression was carefully neutral, but Sarah had known him long enough to read the concern in his eyes.
Coalition regulations clearly state.
I know what the regulations say, Jack.
Sarah cut him off, not unkindly.
She turned to face her crew, seeing her own determination reflected in their faces. This was why humans had gained respect throughout the galaxy, despite, or perhaps because of, their reputation as reckless Deathworlders.
But there are people out there who need help. That's all I need to know.
She moved back to the captain's chair, settling into its familiar embrace. Helm, set course for those coordinates.
Maximum warp.
Aye, Captain, came the immediate response from Ensign Park at the helm station.
Torres, keep monitoring that frequency. If they send another transmission, I want to hear it immediately. Yes, ma'am.
And Jack, Sarah turned to her first officer, sound general quarters.
I want all departments at combat readiness.
If something in that zone was dangerous enough to make the Coalition quarantine it, we're going to be ready for whatever we find. The klaxon sounded throughout the ship, its harsh tone echoing through corridors and compartments as the crew of the Resilience prepared for the unknown. In engineering, Chief Petty Officer Williams began running diagnostics on the warp core, pushing the human-designed fusion reactor to its limits. In the medical bay, Dr. Elizabeth Foster started preparing for casualties, her trained hands moving efficiently through her equipment checks. And in the armory, Master Sergeant Rodriguez supervised the distribution of weapons and armor, knowing that if they were heading into the Forbidden Zone, they'd better be prepared for a fight. The journey to Sector 7G would take them 6 hours at maximum warp. 6 hours to wonder what they would find when they arrived, and 6 hours for Captain Chen to question whether she was leading her crew into a suicide mission. But as she watched the stars streak past the view screen, she knew she'd made the right choice. It was what humans did. When someone called for help, they answered. It didn't matter if those someones were alien, if the danger was unknown, or if the odds were stacked against them. They answered the call of the Zektai had been a proud species once. Standing nearly 8 feet tall on average, with chitinous exoskeletons that gleamed like polished obsidian and 4 arms that ended in delicate manipulator appendages, they had been among the founding members of the Galactic Coalition. Their homeworld of Zekera was a paradise of crystal spires and floating gardens, where art and science flourished in perfect harmony. Or at least, it had been until the Devourers came. Sub-Commander Kelanthax clutched the communications console with 3 of his 4 arms, his compound eyes fixed on the static-filled display. Around him, the bridge of the science vessel Harmony of Stars was a scene of barely controlled chaos. Emergency lights cast harsh shadows across the faces of his crew, and the acrid smell of burning circuitry filled the air. Status report, he clicked in the rapid, harmonic language of his people. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7, reported his tactical officer, her voice tight with fear. We've lost main power to the port weapon arrays, and life support is operating at 60% efficiency. Kelanthax's antennae twitched with frustration. The Harmony of Stars wasn't a warship, it was a deep space research vessel, designed for exploration and scientific discovery. When the distress call had come from the outlying colony of Zekmora, they had been the closest ship to respond. They had expected to find survivors of a natural disaster, perhaps a seismic event or atmospheric storm. They had not expected to find the Devourers. "Sir," the communications officer's voice cracked as she spoke. "I'm receiving another transmission from the surface. The colony's defensive shields are failing. They're requesting immediate evacuation." Through the main view screen, Kelanthax could see the planet below them. Zekmora had once been a thriving agricultural world, its surface dotted with the characteristic crystal towers that marked Zektai settlements. Now, massive black scars marred the landscape, and the aurora that should have danced gracefully around the planet's magnetic field flickered erratically. "How long until the next wave?" he asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Sensors indicate another swarm approaching from the dark side of the moon," his science officer replied. "Estimated time to contact, 14 minutes. 14 minutes. Kelanthax felt his secondary hearts racing as he considered their options. The Harmony of Stars couldn't take another attack like the last one. Their shields were barely holding, their weapons were nearly depleted, and they had already lost 12 crew members when the Devourers had breached the lower decks. The Devourers. Even thinking the name sent chills through his exoskeleton. They weren't from this galaxy, that much the Coalition's scientists had determined before the first worlds fell. They were something else entirely, something that consumed not just organic matter but the very essence of life itself. Worlds they touched became lifeless husks, drained of everything that made them capable of supporting life. And they were spreading. "Sub-Commander," his tactical officer called out, her voice rising with urgency. "I'm detecting movement in the asteroid field. Multiple contacts, heading directly for us." Kelanthax closed his eyes briefly, offering a prayer to the eternal harmony that guided his people. When he opened them again, his resolve was firm. "Send out the emergency beacon on all Coalition frequencies," he ordered. "Include our current coordinates and a full tactical assessment of the threat. If we don't survive this, perhaps someone else will be able to warn the rest of the galaxy." "Sir, the nearest Coalition patrol is 3 days away at best," his communications officer protested. By then, we'll be dead, and the Devourers will have consumed another world," Kelanthax finished bluntly. "But we must try. Send the signal." The communications officer's fingers flew over her console, encoding the distress signal with all the information they had gathered about their attackers. As she worked, Kelanthax found himself thinking about his clutchmates back on Zekera, about the younglings who would never know the beauty of the crystal gardens if the Devourers couldn't be stopped. "Signal sent, Sub-Commander," she reported. "Broadcasting on all frequencies." "Good. Now, bring us about. If we're going to die today, let's make sure we take as many of these abominations with us as possible." The Harmony of Stars turned to face the approaching swarm, her remaining weapons charging for what would likely be their final battle. Kelanthax stood tall on his bridge, every inch the proud Zektai warrior that his ancestors had been, and prepared to meet his fate with honor. He could only hope that someone, somewhere, would hear their call for help and be brave enough to answer it. The Resilience dropped out of warp at the edge of Sector 7G with a flash of distorted light that briefly illuminated the darkness of space. Captain Chen felt the familiar lurch in her stomach as the ship's inertial dampeners struggled to compensate for the sudden deceleration, and she gripped her chair's armrests until the sensation passed. Report, she ordered as soon as the bridge stabilized. We're at the coordinates from the distress signal, Ensign Park announced from the helm. I'm reading one planet, Class M, and... Captain, there's a ship in orbit. It's badly damaged. On screen. The main view screen shimmered and resolved into a view of the alien vessel. Captain Chen had seen many ship designs during her years in space, but this one was unlike anything in her experience. It was elegant, almost organic in its curves, with what appeared to be crystal formations integrated into its hull. However, the beauty of its design was marred by obvious battle damage, scorched armor plating, breached sections trailing atmosphere, and weapon burns along its flanks. I'm reading life signs, Lieutenant Torres reported from his station. Faint, but definitely there. The ship appears to be of Zektai origin, according to our database. Sarah nodded. She knew of the Zektai. They were one of the more peaceful species in the Coalition, known more for their art and scientific achievements than their military prowess. Which made it all the more puzzling why one of their ships would be here, in the Forbidden Zone. Any response to our hails? Negative, Captain. I'm trying all standard frequencies, but I'm not getting anything back. What about that planet? Any signs of what attacked them? Commander Jackson studied his tactical display, his brow furrowed in concentration. I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. Multiple impact craters, and, this is strange. The readings suggest massive bioenergy drains across several continents. Bioenergy drains? It's like something sucked the life right out of large sections of the planet's surface. I've never seen anything like it. Captain Chen felt a chill run down her spine. She was beginning to understand why this sector had been quarantined. Captain, Torres's voice cut through her thoughts. I'm getting something on the emergency frequency. It's weak, but it's definitely coming from the Zektai ship. Put it through. The bridge speakers crackled with static, and then a voice came through alien, but the universal translator rendered it into English. Anyone receiving this transmission? Harmony of stars requesting immediate assistance, under attack by unknown hostiles, colony below has been consumed, please respond. The message repeated, growing weaker with each iteration. They're still alive, Sarah said grimly. Jackson, take a team over there. I want a full assessment of their condition and their tactical situation. Be ready for anything. Aye, Captain. I'll take Rodriguez and a medical team. And Jackson, Sarah called as he headed for the turbolift. Full combat gear. I don't like the feel of this. As her first officer left the bridge, Sarah turned her attention back to the tactical display. The planet below looked like it had been savaged by some unimaginable force, and the Zektai ship was barely holding together. But there was something else, something that nagged at the edge of her consciousness. Torres, expand our sensor range. I want to know if we're alone out here. Scanning now, Captain. Torres worked his console for several minutes, his expression growing increasingly troubled. Captain, I'm reading some kind of mass approaching from the far side of the moon. It's huge. And it's moving. Moving how? Like a swarm. Thousands of individual contacts, all heading this way. Sarah felt her blood run cold. Whatever had attacked the Zektai ship was coming back, and they were heading directly into its path. Red alert, she commanded. All hands to battle stations. Torres, get me a communication channel to that Zektai ship. I don't care how weak their signal is, I need to talk to them. Channel open, Captain. Zektai vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Resilience. We're here in response to your distress call. What is your situation? For a moment, there was only static. Then, a new voice came through stronger than the automated message, but tinged with exhaustion and pain. Captain Chen. I am Subcommander Kellenthax of the Harmony of Stars. You actually came. I did not dare to hope. We're here, Subcommander. What's your status? We are dying, Captain. The creatures that attacked us, they are unlike anything in our databases.
They consume life itself, leaving nothing but dead matter in their wake. We estimate another attack wave will arrive in approximately 8 of your minutes. 8 minutes. Sarah's mind raced through their options. They could retreat, report back to Coalition Command, and let them deal with the threat. It would be the safe choice, the logical choice. It would also mean abandoning the survivors to die. Sub-Commander, can your ship move under its own power? Negative. Our engines are offline, and we have multiple hull breaches. We are trapped here. Understood. We're sending over a boarding party to assist with your wounded and assess your tactical situation. Hang tight, the cavalry has arrived. Captain Chen, Kelanthax's voice carried a note of confusion. I am unfamiliar with this term cavalry. But I thank you for your assistance. You should know, however, that our attackers are extremely dangerous. Perhaps you should withdraw while you still can. Sarah smiled grimly. Sub-Commander, you obviously don't know much about humans. We have a saying, no one gets left behind. We're not going anywhere. There was a pause, and when Kelanthax spoke again, his voice carried a new note, something that might have been hope. I am beginning to understand why your species is spoken of with such reverence throughout the Coalition. Thank you, Captain Chen. Don't thank me yet. We've got 8 minutes to figure out how to fight something that even the Coalition is afraid of. Let's get to work. Commander Jackson materialized on the Zektai ship's bridge in a swirl of transporter energy, followed immediately by Master Sergeant Rodriguez and 2 medics. The first thing that hit him was the smell acrid smoke mixed with something that reminded him of ozone after a lightning strike. The second was the sight of the Zektai crew. He had studied xenobiology at the academy, but seeing the insectoid aliens in person was still a shock. Sub-Commander Kelanthax stood nearly 8 feet tall, his obsidian exoskeleton reflecting the emergency lighting in fascinating patterns. Forearms moved independently as he coordinated damage control efforts, and his compound eyes tracked Jackson's arrival with obvious relief. Commander Jackson, I presume? Kelanthax's voice came through the universal translator with only a slight delay. That's right. We're here to help. Jackson looked around the bridge, taking in the damage. Several consoles had been completely destroyed, and he could see scorch marks on the walls that looked like they'd been made by some kind of energy weapon. What's your crew status? 12 dead, 17 wounded, 8 unaccounted for in the lower sections, Kelanthax replied grimly. We have been fighting these creatures for 6 hours now. Jackson gestured to his medics, who immediately moved to assist the wounded Zektai crew members. The aliens looked grateful, but wary humans had a reputation as competent fighters, but they were also known for their sometimes reckless approach to danger. Tell me about these attackers, Jackson said, moving to what appeared to be the tactical station. What exactly are we dealing with? Kelanthax activated a holographic display that showed the space around their position. They call themselves the Devourers, though we do not know if that is their true name or simply a designation. They arrived 3 days ago and immediately began attacking the colony on Zekmora. The display shifted to show the planet below, with red indicators marking areas of destruction. Jackson felt his stomach clench as he realized the scale of devastation. What do they want? Life itself, it seems. They consume everything organic matter, but also the bioenergy that sustains living systems. Where they pass, nothing remains but dead rock. Kelanthax's antennae drooped with exhaustion. We attempted to evacuate the colony, but they detected our approach and attacked. How many of them are we talking about? Our sensors detected over 10,000 individual entities in the swarm that attacked us. They move like a coordinated organism, but each unit appears to be independently capable of devastating attacks. Jackson felt a chill run down his spine. 10,000 enemies against 2 ships, one of which was barely functioning. The odds weren't good, but he'd faced worse. At least, he hoped he had. What kind of weapons are effective against them? That is, problematic. Our energy weapons seem to have minimal effect. Physical projectiles fare somewhat better, but they adapt quickly to any consistent attack pattern. Rodriguez stepped forward, his weathered face grim. Sounds like we're gonna need to get creative. Rodriguez, what's our weapon status on the Resilience?
Full complement of photon torpedoes, phaser arrays are at 100%, and I've got a couple of experimental plasma charges we've been wanting to field test.
Jackson nodded, then turned back to Kelanthax. How long until they return? Approximately 4 minutes by your time measurement. Jackson tapped his comm badge. Jackson to Resilience. Captain, we've got a situation here. Go ahead, Commander.
The aliens we're facing are called Devourers. They're a swarm-type enemy, over 10,000 strong, and they consume life energy.
The Zektai weapons aren't very effective against them. What about our weapons? Unknown, but Rodriguez thinks we might be able to adapt.
We need to get the survivors off this ship, though. She's not going to survive another attack.
Negative, Commander. We don't have time for a full evacuation. You need to get back here now. Jackson looked around the bridge at the Zektai crew.
These beings had risked their lives to save the colony below, and now they were stranded, waiting to die.
The human response was automatic and immediate.
Captain, request permission to remain aboard and assist in defense of this vessel. There was a pause before Chen's voice came back, and Jackson could hear the grim smile in her words.
I was hoping you'd say that. Rodriguez, can you get their weapons back online?
The Master Sergeant was already examining one of the damaged consoles. Give me 10 minutes and some spare parts, and I'll have these weapons singing opera, Captain.
You've got 3 minutes. Jackson, coordinate your defense with ours. We're going to make our stand here. Understood. Jackson out. Kelanthax looked at the humans with obvious amazement. You would risk your lives for strangers? For beings you have never met?
Jackson shrugged, a gesture that was lost on the alien commander but somehow conveyed meaning anyway.
It's what we do. Rodriguez, what do you need? Power coupling there, backup computer core here, Rodriguez pointed as he spoke.
And somebody who knows how to reroute the firing controls through the auxiliary systems.
One of the Zektai crew members stepped forward. I am Engineer Veltar.
I can assist with the technical modifications.
Perfect. Let's get to work. As the humans and aliens worked together to prepare their defense, Jackson couldn't help but think about what they were facing.
10,000 enemies, an unknown enemy capability, and 2 ships, one of which was barely spaceworthy. But they were humans, and humans had never backed down from a fight when innocent lives were at stake. They'd find a way. They always did. Contact, someone shouted from the sensor station. Massive swarm approaching from the lunar shadow. ETA, 90 seconds. Jackson moved to the tactical station and activated the ship's intercom.
All hands, this is Commander Jackson.
Battle stations. We're about to show these Devourers what happens when they mess with the good guys. He glanced at Kelanthax, who was watching him with something that might have been admiration.
Ready, Sub-Commander?
Ready, Commander.
Let us see what humans can accomplish when they put their minds to it.
Captain Chen watched the tactical display as the swarm emerged from behind the moon like a dark tide. The sensors could barely process the number of individual contacts, thousands upon thousands of creatures moving in perfect coordination, their trajectory aimed directly at the 2 ships. My God, Torres whispered from his station. They're huge. Through the main view screen, the first wave became visible to the naked eye. Each creature was the size of a small fighter craft, with what appeared to be organic armor plating and weapon appendages that crackled with dark energy. They moved through space with an undulating motion that was somehow both graceful and terrifying.
All weapons, target the lead elements, Chen ordered. Fire at will.
The Resilience's phaser arrays lanced out, striking the nearest creatures with brilliant beams of directed energy. Several of the beings simply absorbed the energy, their organic armor glowing brighter as they converted the attack into power for their own systems. Others were damaged but continued their approach, trailing what looked like black ichor through the vacuum.
Direct hits, but minimal effect, reported the tactical officer. They're adapting to our phaser frequency. Switch to torpedoes. Full spread. A salvo of photon torpedoes streaked toward the swarm, their matter/antimatter warheads detonating in brilliant flashes among the creatures. This time, the effect was more pronounced. Dozens of the beings were destroyed outright, and their coordinated movement faltered for a moment. "That's more like it," Chen muttered. "Continue torpedo attack, but vary the yield and detonation patterns. Don't let them adapt." From the Zektai ship, emerald energy beams began lancing out as Rodriguez and the alien engineers brought their weapons back online. The crystalline weapon arrays were different from human technology, operating on harmonic frequencies that seemed to disrupt the creature's coordination. "Jackson to resilience," her first officer's voice crackled over the comb. "Their weapons work on a different principle than ours. The Devourers can't adapt as quickly to the harmonic frequencies." "Understood. Torres, can we modify our phasers to match their frequency?" "It'll take time, Captain. Maybe 20 minutes to recalibrate the entire array." Chen looked at the tactical display. The swarm was less than 30 seconds from weapons range, and they were still coming in overwhelming numbers. "We don't have 20 minutes. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Let's see how maneuverable these things are." The Resilience banked hard to starboard, her inertial dampeners working overtime to keep the crew from being thrown around the bridge. The Zektai ship, despite its damage, managed a more limited evasive pattern. The first wave of Devourers opened fire. Dark energy beams lashed out from hundreds of creatures simultaneously, striking both ships with devastating force. The Resilience's shields flared and sparked as they absorbed the impact, while several beams punched through the Zektai ship's weakened defenses entirely. "Shields down to 60%, Torres reported as the ship shuddered under the assault. "Hull breaches reported on decks 7 and 12. Return fire. All weapons." The space around the two ships erupted in a deadly light show as human and Zektai weapons engaged the swarm. Torpedoes detonated among the creatures, phaser beams carved through their ranks, and the harmonic crystal arrays of the alien ship created disruptions in their formation. But for every Devourer they destroyed, 10 more took its place. "Captain," Torres called out, his voice tight with stress. "I'm reading bioenergy drains wherever they make contact with our hull. They're literally trying to eat the ship." Chen felt her blood run cold. She had faced pirates, hostile aliens, and natural disasters, but this was something entirely different. These creatures weren't just trying to destroy them, they were trying to consume them. "All hands, seal off any section that's been breached. Emergency containment protocols." "Ma'am," Ensign Park called from the helm, "the swarm is trying to surround us. If they complete the encirclement, we'll be trapped." Chen studied the tactical display, watching as the creatures moved with an intelligence that was both alien and terrifying. They weren't just attacking randomly, they had a strategy, a plan. And that plan was working. "Jackson," she called over the calm, "status on the Zektai ship?" "We're holding together, but barely. We've lost main engines and 2 more weapon arrays. I don't think we can take much more of this." Chen made a decision that went against every tactical manual she'd ever studied, but felt right in her gut. "All ships, full attack. Ramming speed toward the center of their formation." "Captain?" Torres looked at her with shock. "You heard me. If they want to surround us, let's give them something to surround. Set course directly for the center of their swarm, maximum impulse." The Resilience surged forward, directly into the heart of the enemy formation. Devourer creatures swarmed around them like angry hornets, their weapons raking the ship's hull with continuous fire. But the maneuver had the desired effect, it disrupted their coordinated attack pattern and gave both ships room to maneuver. "All weapons, continuous fire. Don't let them regroup." The battle raged for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Both ships were taking massive damage, but they were also inflicting casualties on the swarm. The space around them was filled with the debris of destroyed creatures and the energy discharges of dozens of weapons. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the attack stopped. The surviving Devourers pulled back, regrouping at the edge of sensor range. Chen watched them on the tactical display, trying to understand their strategy. "Why are they withdrawing?" she asked aloud. Captain, Torres said quietly, I think I know. Sensors are showing massive energy buildup from the planet's surface.
Whatever they were doing down there, they're almost finished.
Chen looked at the planet on the main screen.
The energy readings were off the charts, and she could see new formations of creatures emerging from the surface, creatures that dwarfed the ones they had just fought.
Oh, hell, she whispered.
The real battle was just beginning. Sub-Commander Kelanthax struggled to his feet as the attack ceased, 3 of his 4 arms clutching damaged consoles for support. Around him, the bridge of the Harmony of Stars was a disaster area. Half the crew stations were destroyed, emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the walls, and the smell of burned electronics filled the air. But they were alive. Status report, he clicked to his surviving crew members. Weapons are offline, reported Engineer Veltar, her usually pristine exoskeleton now scorched and cracked.
We have power to life support and sensors only. Hull integrity? Holding, but we've lost atmosphere in sections 4 through 9. Emergency containment fields are in place. Kelanthax nodded grimly and opened a communication channel to the human ship. Commander Jackson, what is your status?
The human's voice came back immediately, though it sounded strained.
We're alive, but that's about the best I can say.
The Resilience took a beating, but she's still spaceworthy.
What about you? We survive, though barely. Commander, your captain's tactics were unorthodox.
There was a sound that the translator rendered as a laugh.
That's humans for you. We don't always do things the conventional way.
Kelanthax found himself appreciating the human approach more and more. In the centuries since the Zektai had joined the Galactic Coalition, they had become accustomed to carefully planned, methodical strategies. The human's willingness to improvise and take risks was both terrifying and inspiring. Sub-Commander, his science officer called out, her voice filled with alarm.
You need to see this. Kelanthax moved to the science station, where a holographic display showed the planet below.
The energy readings were staggering, far beyond anything they had previously recorded.
What am I looking at?
The creatures that just attacked us were merely the first wave. The main force has been on the planet's surface, conducting some kind of harvesting operation. They have drained the life force from entire continents. The display shifted to show the approaching threat. Rising from the planet's atmosphere were creatures that made the previous attackers look like insects. Each one was the size of a coalition cruiser, with organic armor that pulsed with absorbed life energy.
How many? Kelanthax asked, though he dreaded the answer.
57 confirmed contacts, with more still emerging. Sub-Commander, if they reach full space, they will have enough absorbed energy to drain entire star systems.
Kelanthax felt his secondary heart stop beating. The implications were staggering.
These creatures weren't just raiders or conquerors, they were a galaxy-ending threat.
Open a channel to the human ship. Priority 1. Channel open. Captain Chen, this is Sub-Commander Kelanthax. We have a significant development.
The human captain's voice came back immediately.
We see them on our sensors too. What exactly are we looking at?
Our science officer believes these creatures have been harvesting life energy from the planet below. The entities now emerging have absorbed enough bioenergy to threaten entire star systems. There was a pause before Captain Chen responded, and when she did, her voice carried a grim determination that Kelanthax was beginning to recognize as distinctly human.
Sub-Commander, I need to ask you something, and I need a straight answer. Is there any way to stop them? Kelanthax looked at his science officer, who was frantically working her console.
After a moment, she looked up with despair in her compound eyes. Theoretically, she began, if we could disrupt their energy absorption process before they fully emerge from the planet's gravity well, we might be able to cause a cascade failure in their bioenergy matrix.
How? We would need to overload their absorption capability with more energy than they can process. But the power requirements would be enormous, far beyond what our 2 ships can generate.
Captain Chen's voice cut across the channel.
What if we used the planet's own energy against them? Kelanthax's science officer's antennae perked up with interest. Explain, please. The planet has a molten core, right?
Massive geothermal energy that they haven't tapped into yet. What if we could trigger a controlled release of that energy while they're still in the atmosphere? That would require precise targeting of the planet's tectonic weak points, followed by a coordinated bombardment to trigger seismic events. The science officer's voice grew excited as she worked through the calculations. Yes, it could work, but the timing would have to be perfect. And both our ships would have to get dangerously close to the planet's surface. Commander Jackson's voice added over the coma, close enough that we'd be sitting ducks for their weapons.
Captain Chen's response was immediate.
Then we'll have to make sure we destroy them before they can destroy us.
Kellenfax found himself amazed once again by human determination.
Any other coalition species would be looking for ways to retreat and warn the galaxy of the threat. The humans were looking for ways to eliminate it entirely. Captain, he said formally, the Zektai place our ship and our lives at your disposal. If this plan has any chance of success, we will follow your lead.
I appreciate that, Subcommander. But I need to know, is your ship capable of atmospheric flight?
Engineer Veltar looked up from her console.
Barely.
We have maneuvering thrusters only, and our structural integrity is compromised.
But yes, we can enter the atmosphere. Good. Here's what we're going to do.
As Captain Chen outlined her plan, Kellenfax felt a mixture of terror and admiration. The strategy was audacious, dangerous, and probably suicidal. It was also their only chance of stopping a threat that could consume the entire galaxy. It was, he realized, a very human solution to an impossible problem.
All ships, Captain Chen's voice rang with authority, prepare for atmospheric entry. We're going to wake up a planet.
The Resilience shuddered as it hit the outer atmosphere of Zekmora, her hull plating beginning to glow from the friction of atmospheric entry. Captain Chen gripped her command chair as the ship bucked and rolled through the turbulent air, the in.